Wake up. All right. Sorry about the delay, guys. I guess it just went live without me pushing the little button to tell it to do so, so that's fine. Here we are. Final round. Oh, I didn't mean to leave that banner up about the tips and stuff. It's for my music. Let's get rid of that. And maybe what do you guys think of the weird DMT imagery? Should I get rid of it? No, I like it. Let's leave it there. So most of you guys probably know what's going on. My content generally just gets batched out to the same little group of people, but in case there are some new folks, I'm going to kind of reiterate to offer some context. And also, the situation got a little bit worse the other day after one of my censorship streams. I got a notification that I got a strike for a 5-year-old video that has no prohibited content in it. It has a disclaimer also, just in case. And it was just a wild mushroom video, bleeding tooth hyacinths and morels and stinkhorns and stuff. But as soon as I did the YouTube censorship video, as soon as I clicked off the stream, I got the notification immediately. So basically, in addition to everything else, it's clear to me that my days on YouTube are numbered. And I have a family, and we are dependent upon it for reach, for our businesses and events, and also because I have a message that I think is important. I mean, that's as important as everything else. But from a pragmatic point of view, now that I have realized that I'm banned from advertising on every single platform, and that I've been throttled on Substack, you know what I mean? Like there's kind of nowhere for me to go. Hold on, I'm trying to turn this up. Nowhere for me to go. I'm kind of boxed in, and being in the middle of nowhere in the Andes and realizing that my advertising has been cut off and that I'm not probably going to be able to use Substack to push through to a new audience. It's extremely frustrating. And all of that comes, there's one other element that I should mention. AI company contacted me some months ago offering money, basically saying that their system, its job is to scan for, I turned that up too much, scan for underserved creators, right? People that could represent like the next big thing, or, people that are ahead of the game but not yet recognized. And they were like, yours is best in class of this type, so we would like to buy it and pay you to analyze it and generate AI videos based on it. And I was like, no, because there's a lot of reasons, but they would have owned the rights to my image, my voice, all my content, but they could do anything. And they even specified in the contract, including for like immoral purposes. And I don't know what that means. I don't care. I didn't do it. But I've been getting copyright claims on my live streams that are just off the top of my head, like spoken word, stream of consciousness. And it turns out it's because the automated system is flagging them because it's detecting speech patterns and similarities in the content. Because the videos you know what I mean? The copyright claim is coming from a copy of my shit. That's why it has my speech patterns and ideas, So yeah, it's super, super frustrating. And so anyways, I needed a plan to try to get around this. I should have probably taken action years ago when I realized it was a problem. And I did get a plan from AI, but it's going to require a lot of work, a lot of time, and a lot of money, really. And so I thought I would try to raise some funds with my community here, and failing that, I don't know what I'll do, because my plan was basically to go through my older content. And I have on many, many occasions anticipated scientific discoveries. I predicted all kinds of political developments, cultural. It's all been spot on, and we're going to get into why that is eventually. But yeah, I was going to do that and then do paid promotions to try to get it out there, And then the video is going to be like the physicist explaining it now and me 6 years ago talking about it. Things along those lines. And it's a tremendous amount of time and a tremendous amount of work. And now that I can't even pay to push the content, it's very discouraging. So another issue with this plan that AI concocted for me is that I wouldn't be able to reference any of this older material, which is crucial to this whole thing. The point that I'm really trying to make, which is about consciousness and our undervalue of the intuitive aspect of intellect, and balancing, reason with this intuitive process as like the necessary integration to lift us up above our current predicament. It really is that. And so that's one of the developments lately that's really lit a fire under my ass. There's a lot of levels to it, but especially over the last couple of days, I have seen interviews with physicists from NASA and looking at Penrose's theories in depth, and just a whole lot of other things. I was able to uncover my actual IQ by looking into a program that I was involved with as a child. It's like all of these little bits and pieces coalesce to make me realize that I have been basically getting downloads via a sort of resonant bleed or something, from the universe. And I'm in a position now where I can basically prove that, and I'm confident about it. And I understand what it means and how it happened, and I can explain it, Also, these personal insights have kind of lifted a layer of fog from my mind, and interference patterns of doubt and confusion, I guess, all suddenly dissipated. So, this moment is absolutely critical for humanity. We are at the tipping point. We may be past the tipping point. It all may be a futile effort already. We might be past the point of no return. I fully acknowledge that. But if not, we might as well try. Line up a long shot. Try 2 times, maybe more. And I don't think we have a ton of time to act. So basically, I am here tonight as part of my effort to get some momentum and to make some impact, because I know that I can, and I know that I've already done something that is significant and important. And it's not just important in terms of like my benefit and getting me credit. I don't really care that much, except it's nice to survive, you know. But it is the contribution to this revolution in consciousness that I have wanted to make since I was born. I feel like I've managed to actually create something, you know, that does that, to leave a breadcrumb trail. And I really do think it would be unfortunate if it was just 7 years of effort with at least a few literal miracles accomplished. And it just, you know, we just hit a wall at 100 miles an hour and, you know, it's just nothing comes of it. So, you know I'm a bit rambly. I'm starting to get better. I've been sick for like a week. And the layers of new impediments just keep piling up. It's really interesting because, as I was alluding to before, I've got this clarity and sense of power and determination restored, you know, and then simultaneously I realized that there are walls all around me that might be unscalable. Let me check in with the chat real quick and see. Gang. Yeah, so I actually pulled up, let me see, I gotta make some arrangements to do this. I pulled up this old clip. Are you guys getting glitching, or is that just in my monitors? That happens sometimes. Let me see if I can shut down some more effects. Maybe that'll get it to chill. Yeah, there you go. It's better. What did I started to say? I thought I started to say something. Media source. No. It's this thing that we need up there. All right, so this is just an older clip I randomly pulled up earlier today. Let's watch it.
Given the evidence for why, you know, the standard religions have failed us, and they propagate a storybook mentality, a fantasy modality of reality that is not going to get you anywhere. You know, I think I just lost a good friend because, you know, once he decided that he'd become all these imaginary beings, and your life turns into a fucking comic book. You know what I mean? It's not helpful to you. It's not helpful to anyone, and it's not real. And the reality is that we can actually understand the universe, and we can come to determinations and understanding of real things on our own. You don't need a book. You don't need a shaman. You don't need anything. I mean, you might need a shaman or something in the early stages of your development. But eventually, you know, you develop a process. You can learn a process to interact with the universe in a way that allows you to uncover the truth about things. You know, that's what's so powerful about alchemy, for example. I posted a short that actually has done really well about alchemy, really well by my standards, I guess. And the amount of ridicule and just stupidity in the comments that I've gotten is just mind-blowing. People really are, you know, they're confined by the parameters that have been dictated to them by the overlords and the thought police, right? They have very narrow channels that they're allowed to run in. And one of the things that I've noticed is that even if you present them with proof, if it goes against an idea that is fundamental enough, they will reject it. They will fight against it. There was somebody in the comment section that was like laughing, like, oh yeah, right, like you can turn hair into wine or whatever. Like, I mean, that example is completely dumb anyways, but the point is that we have actually determined that you can change any element into any other element by adding and subtracting protons. I mean, you can subtract them a lot easier than you can add them. But, you know, even after explaining this, they were still saying like, oh, well, you know, I guess water into wine is possible. So I don't know, I guess anything's possible. And it's like, it's already been done. Like it's you can do it in lots of laboratories all around the world. It's just not cost efficient to like make gold that.
Yeah, so this reminds me of it's kind of why I wanted to watch it again, just to kind of give me some fodder to go off of. But one of the main themes on this channel since its inception has been about intuitive information reception, transconscious knowledge. I don't know. Can we just call it downloads? I guess. Yeah, that's driving me nuts. It's really glitchy. And I noticed a long time ago that people hundreds of years ago and probably longer ago had described things that science was just starting to intuit recently. And one of the most interesting examples of that is actually from alchemy. Because, when I was in, I guess, junior high school, I remember our science teacher telling us that you cannot transmute elements. And it turns out that this had actually been done for the first time in the 1930s. So here it is, like 1992, and we're still telling kids things are impossible that are damn near a century old, that we have done these things almost a century ago at that time. And it gets even more interesting and on a lot of levels because there are actually descriptions by people like Albert Pike in Morals and Dogma of the process that alchemists actually used. And if anyone would know, you would think it would be a 33rd degree Freemason, right, like Albert Pike. And he actually describes that it's quicksilver, which is mercury, and that the transmutation process involves hitting it with some kind of current of energy. It sounds an awful lot like knocking a proton off of mercury to make gold. I mean, it's this. He describes very, it's very rough. The vernacular that was available to him at the time, but it's eerily accurate. And, back in the day, they had no reason to understand that mercury and gold had this, that they were so close in terms of like their atomic structure. And even weirder, there is a perfect liquid that is described by Eliphas Levi and a lot of other, Western occult types. And it is derived by transmuting gold, and light is part of the process, right? In particle acceleration chambers, gold ions are smashed into particles, and they described the byproduct of this, basically, as the most perfect fluid. And it hit me that here we are with these, trillion-dollar, but multi-billion-dollar particle acceleration chambers doing exactly what alchemists apparently were doing, 1,000 years ago or more. Really just tremendously remarkable. And then listen to this. Mercury, the planet Mercury, is closest to the sun, one proton away. And recently, what are they called, like spectrometers or something, that they were looking at Mercury with this device that allows them to see specific frequencies or spectrums of light. And they saw that the salt, right, which is one of the alchemical components, was transmuting into photons by the energy of the sun. So the literal fucking planet Mercury is undergoing pretty much exactly the alchemical process that is described in these laboratories. So, there's a lot to unpack from all that. It's not absolute proof, for one thing, of transconscious information reception. But if you look at the rest of the records left by these adepts, you see other things like electromagnetism will be used to send messages across the planet in an instant. Uh, and descriptions of the electromagnetic basis of consciousness and the relationship of light to gold that has just been confirmed in Skirmian bag experiments. And I mean, there's a lot to unpack from that too. You know, that's one example good enough, right? You know, if you put it into the context of all of the other supposedly lucky guesses, all of a sudden the probability that these things are chance starts to decrease and decrease and decrease. And we are just on the cusp of this because a lot of these things that seem to be intuited by these adepts are just sort of on the horizon, on the temporal horizon of science. It looks like they're about to be confirmed, but some of it hasn't been absolutely yet. Which implies that they were actually ahead. And that's what I'm starting to realize for myself. Like, my own instances of transconscious knowledge or information reception have been confirmed absolutely to a point that defies chance, to an improbability of 1 in 26 septillion. You know? And then, listen to this shit. A week after certain other revelations, I stumble upon a video of this physicist who works for NASA. By the way, speaking of discrediting people like this, that talk about this kind of stuff, if you Google his name, which I can't recall, it's Tom something. The first couple of Google hits you get will say, you know, his background is unverifiable, you know, sketchy. But if you actually look like at NASA's website and stuff, it's easy, you know, it's not hard. So that was interesting to notice. He's got all these people trying to discredit him and they're lying through their teeth. Why? But he actually mentioned that there are autistic people, and I happen to be on the spectrum, that are able to just sort of download bits and pieces of this truth from the universal mind. And he went on to describe even specifically one of the mechanisms that I had intuited. I put it on YouTube, one of my AI conversation videos. It deals with Calabi-Yau manifolds and D-branes and mirror symmetry and how it all works together and whatnot, which there's no reason I should know that stuff. First of all, there's no reason for me to know any of it. Yeah, he's described this translation layer as the allegory, like conversion mechanism at the subquantum layer. And that, you know, I mean, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. There's all of these things that I've been piecing together over the years are being confirmed by science, you know. Really just a wild thing to suddenly be confronted with, I guess. I mean, I'm kind of losing my flow just thinking about it because I'm still processing it. You know, I'm still processing a lot of the developments of the last couple of weeks. Another one that I just found the other night, you know, I've been talking about this vision I had years and years ago where I watched the process of creation from replication by reflection, which I now know is called mirror symmetry, right? That is the subquantum process where it all begins in this resonant geometric architecture. But that's how I've spoken about it since forever. And so basically the long and short of it is that the universe is constantly cycling and recreating itself, regenerating itself. And the reason it does this is because it builds upon complexity and it refines things. One of the mechanisms, I guess, that we have noticed that facilitates this like trajectory of the evolutionary process is entrainment, right? So all of these processes are entrained with goal states that are drawing them onward and upward. And so there is within these systems a sort of feedback loop, which is our individual consciousness and probably the consciousness of everything contributing to this database, right? So we learn the laws of physics. We have experiences, we gather information and knowledge on behalf of the universal mind for the universal mind so it can put it in its database, and then it's all factored in when the universe reaches its omega point and then starts contracting. And you can think of it like an acorn. There has to be a record of oak trees in the acorn in order for it to make an oak tree. The same thing with the universe, So these cycles began a very simple thing, and the fine-tuning of the universe, also all these constants that are so ridiculously fine-tuned that it's, the probability of them being accidental is like a one in some number that you couldn't count to in the entire lifespan of the universe. It's not... What that basically means is that it's not just a probabilistic fucking fluke. It's just dumb to even think that. But it's not a sky god creating shit either. Not exactly. It's this infinite process of refinement and development. And there is reason and purpose and logic and all of these things can be understood by people. Right, so I'm trying to do my best to squish this into bite-sized pieces, but all of these things can be understood by people. It's not that lofty, it's not that difficult, and once it's all kind of laid out for a person, assuming that they are sufficiently free of bias, that's the difficult part. Getting through the indoctrination in the first place is quite the task. But the thing is, you are confronted with truth and expressions of like these underlying algorithms and the patterns and so when people hear these things, they've been staring at it their entire life. You know what I mean? It's right there in your face every moment. It is your face. It is your brain. It's not that difficult to get people to recognize the truth when they're presented with it. Yeah, the quantum loop thing just absolutely killed me listening to the Penrose video explaining all of the details of it. I mean, so many things that I've put on this channel, the black holes as incubators for new universes, and just that's so. I mean, if you guys follow my content, I put it in the description actually, that video. It was a crazy thing to watch. But I was going somewhere with this, and it has to do with how to actually, use this stuff to affect any kind of change. If the truth can be told so as to be understood, it will be believed, right? And so what happens when you reflect truth is that you come into homeostasis with it. It is a magnetic attractor. There is a magnetic attractor. There is a goal state that is informing us and trying to exert influence to get the system to conform to what's in its own best interest. And what's in the universal best interest is that those constituent elements are able to express themselves to their fullest. So it's a mutually beneficial situation for us to have the best possible environment to thrive in, right? So when you become aware of this truth, right? The truth is self-substantiating. The truth is light. All else is eternal darkness. It sort of inculcates in your being a homeostasis with your environment, right? And it turns out that acting in the best interest of the collective, as long as it's in balance, is what's in the best interest of the individual. And this awareness of these greater fundamental truths, you know, how the universe works, why it works that way, and not just being told, but learning to observe it for yourself, which is something we can teach. It causes a real change in the individual. This is not like religion where, you know, you adopt some belief system and then you try to conform to scriptural dogma. You know, that doesn't work, obviously. Look around the world. Like, it's a madhouse because of this shit. You know, it's a very different thing to have actual gnosis and genuine experience of real truth, and to not be expected to operate on faith either, because, you know, we demonstrate these things. We will show you that it's true. You know, we will anticipate discoveries in physics by 50 years or 100 or 1,000 or whatever, and we're never wrong, you know, because it is literally the truth, you know. Yeah. And the reality is that what I'm describing, this process of global gnosis, really, is the only possible answer. You know, there is no other way to, like, you're not going to vote, you know, and fix this. You're not going to change the system from capitalism to socialism and change anything until you have changed the consciousness of all of the people on the planet. And, you know, that might seem loftier than it really is, because there is a tremendous amount of dissonance that is continuously being pumped into the minds, souls, and spirits of every single fucking person on this planet. You know, if that stops, you would be amazed how quickly any biological system, which is a culture's a biological system, will seek homeostasis, right? There is no choice. There are laws that are impinging upon us to a certain extent, you know, and they are actually designed in our best interest. They have been refined to do so over not just billions of years, not just trillions of years, but infinite years, spanning in every direction. And when you realize that trusting that is not a matter of faith in a sky god, you know, and while we're on the subject, who would have faith in this sky god? Right? Think about the ridiculous, insane rules and the jealousy and the, you know, cut the foreskin off and whatever. Like, the Israel is apparently trying to, like, immanentize the eschaton right now, you know, to bring about the apocalypse or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? All of this madness. But let's just talk about, like, the jealousy and the, like, you believe in this particular name or else you're going to hell type shit. Like, first of all, how obvious is that it's a trap? You know, that if you're trying to get people to accept one ontological model and not escape it, you're going to go to hell for all of eternity if you question this. Like, come on, man. Just hearing that alone should be enough to make people go, what? Fuck you, that's not real. You know what I mean? Like, it's designed to trap them in there. And now think about this. So why would you design a trap like that unless it was really important that people didn't get out of it, right? But now let's look at the creation here, right? We have all of this reason manifest all around us, logic and proportion and, you know, like, all of the laws perfectly fine-tuned and all of this stuff. So if there is reason in the finite, why in the fuck would you expect unreason in the infinite? That conception of God is not even reflective of creation by any metric that I can see. You know, it's just complete insanity. So having established that, back to, faith based on reason. Once a person like myself basically is capable of putting these things into material terms, explaining the mechanistic basis for it, the hows and whys. So it doesn't even require someone really to be spiritual exactly. They don't have to accept any kind of woo on any kind of scale. This can all be dictated and explained and understood in the arena of common sense and evidence, really increasingly so every single day. Like I know we're tremendously powerful at this point, and also while I'm thinking about it, there's something happening with the synchronization of consciousness. I mean, this is no surprise, right? Like, speaking of things that anticipated science, years and years ago, I was thinking about light, and I thought, well, nothing's faster than light. And this voice in my head is like, consciousness is faster than light. And I was like, shit, that's true, but I don't know how. But then I found out about entanglement, and then I found out that they were entangled by photon pairs emerging from our neurons. And someone suggested that consciousness arises from entanglement. And so, even just entrainment alone, but entangled also, it's no surprise that our consciousness is fundamentally connected, right? But recently, I went through this period of insight, I guess. It was kind of like peeling off a husk, even. And I basically realized that, I was not nuts at all, and that I also definitely wasn't dumb, and that we had been gaslighted by people. In my case, my mother was horrendous, but also the society at large, like institutionalized gaslighting. And as soon as I realized this, I started seeing all these videos of other people with various neurodivergent labels saying the exact same thing. Like, just yesterday, I realized that I have a 140 plus IQ, and that I'm not crazy, and that we do have precognitions, and you know what I mean? And within a week after that, I see a NASA physicist talking about how autistic people can get information that they can't possibly know, and that's like, normal or something. The point being that there's something synchronized happening in that. I mean, it was eerie listening to all these other people suddenly coming out like, yeah, just this week, all of us, just all the same type of realizations, all simultaneously, all around the planet, all different sexes and races and stuff. That was a cool thing to see. Really encouraging. I mean, we need every little ray of hope that we can possibly get at this point. So by the way, y'all, consider supporting the channel. Optimally, I need like a miracle of a magnitude and improbability that it is almost definitely not going to happen. But that's what you would say about the universe existing too. So, I mean, I've experienced so many improbable miracles that I don't really know why I even just said that. Really, the universe is made of miracles, they're the rule rather than the exception. And when I'm feeling a little better, I'm hella rambly, still tired, really out of it right now. I'm well aware of it. But if I continue to do this, if I'm even able to continue to do this, I will make a video soon about how probabilities and consciousness work together to generate things. And that's kind of not the best way to put it, but you know what I'm getting at. I'm checking with the chat again. Yeah, I'm doing better. I'm doing better than I was yesterday, that's for sure. I may even pop on again for music later. I'm kind of realizing as I'm doing this that like I don't think I have a lot of stamina to just kind of talk off the top of my head like I was planning. I mean, I could chew coca. I'm trying not to do that on camera anymore because I know it's just cringy and. But I am sick as hell. So, where else were we going with this? I did have something else in mind. Something about the traps of religion, But we all know. We should all know at this point, what that is. There's really no point in fleshing it out anymore. Watch my old videos on propaganda if you need a refresher. Also, really strange. My partner was maybe going to come and join me, but I have a feeling she's not going to now. She's definitely going to in the next week or so. Like I said, assuming I still exist. She got into this human design system a while back, and it's the kind of thing that I'm generally kind of skeptical of. But I've realized that probably some autistic guy just downloaded all this shit, and it's incredibly accurate. But today she looked up one of my gates, and it was like downloading information randomly. Like, it doesn't come because you want it to. It doesn't come on your own timeline. It often feels like it's just a bunch of jumbled pieces with a loose relation. I mean, you guys have heard me you'll see when we make this video exactly the way I've described it in this chart that she did for me. It says that's part of this whole my design. It's crazy how accurate it is. Absolutely mind blowing. And why? Why? This whole thing is about synergistic systems, right? That we are kind of taking the best elements of various systems and combining them, and that's what makes the really good shit, right? Like, that's what the Grateful Dead did with their music in the 60s. It was like blues, jazz, rock, bluegrass, Celtic, like everything they could, and take all the best parts and squish it all together, and you have something new and better. That's always like the best looking people are always mixed race. That's how you do it. But the human design system is based on astrology, different astrological systems, Kabbalah. I can't remember right now, but all Jungian psychology and all sorts of things, rather than just astrology or just this or that. And I think that's what made it such a refined tool. She does readings too. If anyone's interested in that, you can send me an email. I think it's worth it, honestly. Like, I've always refused to do any kind of readings or advertise them on principle. But in this case, I feel like the system has well established its credibility. So I'm totally supportive of it. In point of fact. By the way, if you guys have questions or comments, you can, things you want me to respond to or talk about, you can throw them in the chat. I was planning on going long tonight just to try, because this is our last ditch effort to raise some support, right? So, like, I don't know what the alternative is yet. I may have to go back to the States. I mean, it's really a sketchy time to put yourself, the only thing that I have to keep me going is online. And there's so many ways that could go wrong right now. So I'm kind of thinking I might have allies in California, and actually do better there. So if anyone lives there and has like a house or something, or like, I don't know. I don't really have a lot of contacts in California, because when the outlaw marijuana industry crashed, everyone lost everything, including me, basically. our fault because we thought it was going to go on forever, and didn't really bother to. A lot of us, most of us, just immediately start saving for the apocalypse, which we all expected. It's pretty bad, really. Um, Hold on. Well, I'm seeing all kinds of comments there, but a little off base. I mean, speak on angels. I don't really believe or disbelieve in angels exactly. I have had what feel like guiding influences that I always suffered for not listening to. And a lot of it was just bias. Like, you can't be listening to voices in your head, then you're a nut, and you're actually a nut because you're acting on it, And in reality, looking back, every single time I was told something, it was true or it led to some ridiculously improbable circumstance that was fulfilled. But I don't know that that's angels. On another occasion, there was a bunch of weird stuff that happened around a certain like demonic idea, and it's true that the next day, Michael, is it the guy that fought Satan in the Garden of Eden or whatever, Archangel Michael. Uh, we had this candle on the stove, and it was huge. It was a big, thick candle, and it was tall, and it burned all the way down like really, really fast. It didn't make any sense. And then suddenly, there were flies, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, on the wires. Like, we had hanging lights, and there were suddenly just flies. Like, I'm not saying they just magically appeared, but like they weren't there the day before. And I just looked around and saw them, and I started looking everywhere in the cabinets for rotten meat and trying to figure out why they were there. Did we forget a trash bag somewhere? I couldn't find anything. There was no weird smells. Um, you know, that's really the closest thing I've ever had to what I would consider any kind of demonic encounter. Nothing bad happened. It was just that there was an idea that was present in the house the day before, and then we have this candle incident and all these flies everywhere. Um, there is coincidence. But basically, what I always say about this is that in all my years of ayahuasca and DMT and ritual magic, all these things, I have never once encountered a malevolent entity. Never once. Anything that's tried to convince me to do anything harmful or stupid or. And I also feel like if we were really contending with invisible higher dimensional beings that were presumably like connected to the universal mind and therefore probably pretty much infinitely intelligent, we would be fucked already. If they were trying to destroy us, there's nothing stopping them. So I really do think it's ridiculous. And it doesn't serve a purpose. It's kind of in conflict with the law of necessity and the dictates of reason. You know what I mean? There's no purpose for that. Everything in the universe serves some kind of purpose, and I don't see what purpose that would serve. And when people talk about the parasitical entities and stuff feeding on our energy, why? If you're already an eternal thing, that lives on a plane of pure consciousness or pure energy or whatever, what do you need energy from people for? Nothing. You can transmute any energy, raw energy, into any type of other energy. That's the basis of alchemy and really all the work of a magician. So it doesn't make any sense. Aleister Crowley wrote about this, about how blood sacrifice is completely stupid, and how that concept of, well, that's basically what he was saying, is that when people talk about sacrifice in order to harvest energy, he said, any competent magician knows there's an infinite source of any type of energy he might need already available to him. Why is he going to kill something to get it? It's just stupid. It doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, I mean, all that kind of thinking is what really, somebody else said, you're Illuminati. That's true. That's definitely true. But it's not, the Illuminati is not what you think it is, probably. The Illuminati, as it's been presented by the media narratives, is just complete bullshit. They are not. I mean, there is something like that. There is a group of people that want to control mankind's humanity, but calling them the Illuminati is falling into a trap, because Weishaupt and his young friends were trying to teach what I'm trying to teach to all of humanity. That was their evil plan, really, and that's why they were labeled as Satanists and shit. That's why Baphomet is on my thumbnail. Because it's not about devils and Satan at all. It's about knowing what the real devil is and using the symbols of the resistance to that, in part. But that's the real truth about a lot of these secret societies, like the Knights Templar. They wanted to get rid of the Catholic Church, and they wanted to overthrow all the crowned heads of Europe, because they knew that you could teach basically scientific illuminism to the entire planet, and then you'd have a bunch of sovereign people, and it would be an amazing place. Like that's what they were trying to do. Oh no, but then the Christians hear about this. What? No God? Get rid of religion and borders too? Yikes. Burn the witch. That's how the bad reputation came. It really is. And has there been abuse of power within the lodges of Freemasonry and shit? Of course there has. I know people up there, and they're not real happy with how things are going. Is it all a bunch of evil people that are trying to rule the world? Nope, sure isn't. There are plenty of like legit Masons still out there. There's entire lodges full of them. It just depends on where you are, how high up you are too. I mean, they've been commandeered at the Scottish Rite level to a large extent. That's kind of how it looks. But Illuminati is just illuminated people, and as Albert Pike wrote, some Masons have received their initiation on the rays of the sun and have never even entered lodge. So it's just, I can't even claim to understand it, but I can tell you that before I ever opened up Albert Pike's book, I knew what it was going to say. And I had known since I was a child, not necessarily exactly what it was going to say, but I knew the moment I saw a Masonic symbol, I knew what it was, and I knew what was connected to it. Same thing with the term Illuminati. Like all of these really central things, even people like Jung, as soon as I saw the name, I'm like, there's a puzzle piece. That's another thing from the reading, you guys. If you've listened to me talk about this, I talk about the things as puzzle pieces, right? In that human design chart, he used the same terminology. Like you're trying to find all these puzzle pieces, and it was super crazy to hear that. Not as crazy as seeing like NASA physicists talking about how, autistic people actually can access knowledge that none of the rest of us, that they shouldn't be able to get. And then he proceeds to describe my entire like model of the universe and consciousness. It's like, holy shit. I guess he's an autistic physicist. Because also he was saying that how he figured this out, it started happening to him. There was like something about punch cards that are these like time cards in some experiment they were doing, and there were certain cards that were missing a hole or something, and he like knew which ones they were out of like huge numbers, and it was a big problem if they didn't. But he just did for no reason, and other stuff. But yeah, I wish I could remember his name. It's like Tom R. I'm sure you guys probably know who I'm talking about already. I'm always late to the game. All right, let me check in with the chat again and see. Yeah, I mean, we know people think stuff about things like sacrifice, but I just disagree because I understand that there's really only one thing in the universe, and that is light. And there's two things. There's light and vacuum, so anything can be made into anything else. There's no reason to. I mean, okay, I'll play devil's advocate here, and I'm not even sure that this is wrong. But for example, the magical idea that the New Testament is predicated upon basically is that opposites generate each other. And this is absolutely confirmed by mirror symmetry. We know for certain that this is a fact now. The thing is, when you get into like ethical and moral generations, like evil generating good, it's a little bit more complicated because it's like these are human, labels that we're putting on. What is it? You know what I mean? Like that's not a material thing. It doesn't matter. All of the laws exert themselves across all the full spectrum from allegory to fucking tiger, you know. But the idea is that the ultimate sacrifice, the ultimate evil, would create the ultimate good, right? So you take the only innocent person that has ever lived and you torture him to death. That's the most evil thing you could do, but that's going to generate the ultimate good, which is the salvation of all of mankind, right? That's the formula. So this is the reason the Aztecs did it. This is the reason the Egyptians did it. This is the reason the Babylonians did it. This is the reason that the Incas did it. And one of the ideas was that if you could just choose who or where the evil is going to manifest, then it's not going to just randomly rain down because it's being generated. It's going to come. You know what I mean? And so the sacrifices were a way to generate good, and by doing evil and also controlling where some of the chaos manifests, some of the negative energy. I'm not saying that's 100% real or not, but I do follow the logic and I do see the underlying principles at work in physics. So, like there could be truth to it, and it could be why we have such a problem. It could be that there are magicians running the world and they know it, and that's why they have wars or something. Hypotheticals, I'm just playing devil's advocate, but it's not just foolish lunatic logic from prehistoric minds. It really isn't. And it's not about evil either. Like the Incas would take the kids that were chosen and they would lavish them with gifts and the best food, and they would go and live with the emperor for a while, and then they were drugged out of their minds for a week before the night, and they actually had no signs of toxicity or injury anywhere. No one knows how they did it because they weren't strangled, they weren't poisoned, they weren't nothing. There's nothing wrong with the bodies. The mummies, there's no cause of death. So we can assume it was humane. I mean, it kind of seems like they just had a shaman like send their soul out or something without hurting them. That's what the bodies suggest. I mean, you guys listen to Guar, right? Bathe them in death to celebrate life. A fitting feast of abject insanity, the dark curtain before the last calamity. Yep, that was their reasoning. I'm not suggesting we need to get back to it or anything. Thoughts on fear, anxiety, is it demonic or something? No. I mean, yes, it depends on context. Everything depends on context. But I went through a series of sort of, I don't know whether to call them shamanic initiations or whatever, but it was like a 7-day period where I was compelled to just go out into the desert at midnight every night, and there was something waiting for me. a different fear to confront. I need to blow my nose and I can't find. And so, long story short, it was a different thing every night. And then the seventh night, I was confronted with something in a way that proved the point, which was just, you know, chef's kiss to the universal mind on that stunt. Um, but what it taught me basically is that if you don't fear whatever you know what I mean, whatever you would be fearing is not coming at you. And it's a strange balancing act. Like, we have to live with paradoxes, you know? You have to just deal with it. Because, of course, this isn't true entirely. But it helps to believe it entirely, you know, to the extent that you're capable of, right? Because there is chaos in the universe. You know, there's order and symmetry, and there's legit chaos. Like, just because you're on your path and, you know, destined for something amazing or whatever the fuck, like, you can take a wrong turn, or you can just get hit by a stray bullet, or you know what I mean? Like, it can still, obviously something can still happen to you, but it was demonstrated to me over and over again that the likelihood is infinitely almost decreased if you have absolutely no fear. You know, and that is not arrogance. That's not what we're talking about. You know, we're not talking about foolhardy, like, delusional sense of invincibility type shit. We're talking about, you know, within the realm of reason, and also as dictated by the law of necessity. You know, if you put yourself at unnecessary risk, you know, but I guess what I'm saying is the universe satisfied me, satisfied that for me, I guess, you know, convinced me of it. So you must have a healthy relationship with fear, but it has stopped me from achieving my dreams in like the most crucial moments when I didn't even realize I was afraid, you know? So it's very tricky. To really make sure that you shine the light in all of the crevices and cracks, and Satan is subtle, you know? And it's funny you ask if it's demonic. That's kind of why I hesitated. No, I don't think it's a demon. It's an evolutionary, you know, instinct that it's an adaptation that keeps us from dying. You know, I mean, but it can manifest in ways that are so convoluted, you know, and obscure to us that it does seem like a fucking demon. The best way I can describe, like, what I learned during that 7-day process is just to recognize energy, feelings, and to use the breath to kind of extinguish them. It's almost like it's an awkward analogy, but when you blow on coal and it lights up with heat, it's kind of like the opposite. You know, you're blowing it out, like. And I don't use a candle analogy because it feels like the way coal looks when you blow on it, but the opposite. You know, it's like a cooling effect that feels like that looks. And it's something that you can learn to assert very quickly too. I'm not really sure how this happens exactly, but after a couple of days where I had learned how to, like, quickly get control of this without even breathing, and I just thought of this just this moment, but I was walking along in the dark in the desert, and I almost stepped on a rattlesnake. I mean, like, almost stepped right in the middle of the fucking thing, and I jumped like 20 feet up. I swear to God, like, I had no idea that a human being. I've never seen any black man on a basketball court jump that high in my life. I really don't think I have. and also away, but it was mostly up. It's crazy, man. Totally instinctive too. As soon as that thing lit up, man, it was through the air, and my dog starts losing his fucking mind, and I'm going, oh no, he's gonna get bit in the face. He's right up in that rattlesnake's grill, like, and I just realized, calm the fuck down, and instantly my energy went from that zzz to like instantly still. And when that happened, that rattlesnake's tail just like perfectly synchronized with my energy calming. And my dog stopped barking at the snake and just like acted like he didn't even know it was there all of a sudden. It was insane. Like I just folded things up into like serenity with my getting control of my energy like that. So what's up, Athena? Did I miss any questions? If you guys have anything else you want me to speak on, go ahead and pop it in the joint. Yeah, I don't see anything else. You flying, bro? I mean, I don't know what you mean. Always flying. I suppose. I can tell you guys for sure, though, shit's finna continue to get interesting. Ain't no doubt about that. And the, like, intensities on both sides of the coin will just continue to escalate, and it's like, pretty 50-50, at least based upon the evidence, like the way the pawns are positioned. We have a tremendous amount of momentum building behind the universal mind, truth emerging in such a way that it will be evident to like anyone that cares to look. And also the technological and biological support to facilitate really stupendous upgrade, from where we've been. But then we also have the black tide, pushing from the other side of just abject dumbfuckery and evil, and they're really just automatons. It's just a lack of awareness, really. Their subconscious shadow self is the puppet master in their being. Awakening is really just about changing the ratio of conscious to subconscious processes in the individual. And somebody like Donald Trump is just like 99% automata, just trauma and programming just running its course. And the overwhelming majority of the common person, I think, is also kind of like that. Here's a good analogy, actually, of how this shit got so out of balance. Like, one of the reasons the common person runs on the same kind of automata, right? But doesn't necessarily go to Epstein Island type shit, right? is that those aren't their parameters. You know, those aren't, what do we call them? Like option spaces or something for them. You know what I mean? Like it's not on the table, really. And risk versus reward is also kind of prohibits a lot because when you're above the law, you know. So on the converse side of that, though, what I'm trying to set up here is that one of our big problems is that people don't know about the kind of transcendental experiences and I want a better word, you know, the qualia fucking over pleasant. You know what I'm saying? Like it's more than just transcendental experiences. Because those also open the doorway to a deeper experience, a more rewarding experience, a richer experience, generally a more benevolent experience. You know what I mean? But if you keep people from knowing that that's there, then they're not going to aspire to achieving it, or, you know, it's like the opposite side of it is. It's literally the opposite end of the spectrum. You know, the common person tends to be more decent than the elites because it's not part of their spectrum of possibilities, partly, you know. But they also, I think if they were aware what is beyond the ontological boundaries that have been imposed upon them, you know, every person would be more inclined to reach for that because it is our natural biological disposition. You know, people have this argument that like humans are wired for nastiness, and it's like that's not how the universe works, you know. That's not in the best interest of the system. That's not how systems operate. That's not how, you know, the trajectory of evolution doesn't suggest that. I'm, you know, like it's not congruent with the rest of the information that we can gather from all the other systems, that it should be that way. What actually makes sense is that the organism is predisposed to do what's in its best interest, not what isn't, you know. It's a bit baffling watching them. I mean, that's all. The only thing I can assume is happening is that they really know that they're going to lose control because science and I don't want to say spirituality, but you know what I mean, is going to reveal itself as a single entity. It's doing that right now. And all of the things that I've been talking about on this channel for all these years about how the different political systems, you know, everyone arguing about them is all engineered because you can determine it all algorithmically, you know, and then with AI coming along, if they can't control it, then it's going to tell everyone that, you know, like their gig is up. They're fucking doomed. You know, I've been seeing more and more and more of that lately. Like a guy, it was the last thing I talked about on a stream last night. It's probably why it came up on my phone. But, you know, I was talking about how it's all a scam and that basically if you're still a voter, you know, if you still contribute to it in any kind of way, you're part of it. You are the scam. Sorry. Like, you know, that's just what's up. And I saw today a video made by this super normal looking dude. Lots and lots of followers. And he was saying all that. Like, you guys ever feel like we're part of a giant scam? Like, everything's a scam? Like, if any politician is talking, no matter who it is, it's a scam. you know, and I'm starting to feel like if we are not aware of that, we're part of the scam. And I was like, holy shit, you know, because this dude was normie as you can get, you know, and he was definitely telling like a few million people what I would say to them if I could, you know. That was amazing to see. That was amazing to see. I've wondered about that too. If it would have been better for me to just like cut my hair and put on a suit and like or whatever, just muggle up and try to go undercover to get this message out to the people that actually need to hear it instead of just yelling into an echo chamber. I mean, not that I don't appreciate you guys, but you know what I mean. Like, I'm still considering. Is that possible? Could I still? I don't know if I could do it though. I mean, convincingly, you know, like try to act like a normal white dude. I don't think that's in the cards for me. Man, 21 people here tonight. That's crazy. I wasn't expecting all that. Should we watch another clip of an old video? I wanted to do that actually, like our little retrospective, but I have so many videos over so many years that it's really difficult to find stuff. You know, I need to take some time to put things together like that. By the way, you guys, don't forget we are trying to raise funds. I have a feeling that they're going to delete me any minute now, and that will cut me off from the whole goddamn world, and I'm in the middle of nowhere in the Andes. After a year of being basically down, unable to really fully function. So it's a crazy thing that like we're coming into all this certainty and like you know sort of empowerment and stuff, and it's like also the most opposition. I I mean I know that's kind of how it works, but still gotta try to fight back. If you guys have any subjects or questions, chat's open, of course. Just kind of skimming through my channel. Shadow boxing the apocalypse. Um, yeah, well, you know, I don't really know what else to say about that. If somebody doesn't feed me some prompts, I'm just still sick and tired, I guess, and not firing on all cylinders. If you guys don't know, my shorts are full of like weird jungle creatures and stuff. It's really kind of disappointing that no one's seen those even. It's like you'd think they would be sophisticated enough to just shadow ban the shit they didn't want people to see. But that's not how it works. I mean, if you scroll through my content, the numbers are so consistent. Like, you'll see like rows of like 237, 237, 238. Like, how does that happen? You know? I actually know how that happens. They batch it out once, and then no matter how it does, they don't do it again. All right, let me check in with the chat. Wow, scrolling through all this is crazy, man. It's like just going back through my mind. All these little things being triggered. Memories of the jungle and Ecuador and deserts and Incan ruins. ants in your pants. Hopefully, Normie guy keeps. All right, guys, come on. You got to have some kind of questions or something for me. Feed me something. Feed me. Well, here, we can talk about some neurodivergent stuff. Something that just kind of struck me as interesting. Like, it sounds like I probably have, how do you say it? It's like ADHD, so like autistic attention deficit disorder, right? But the consequence of that is that I can hyper focus on something for 14 hours. Like, I can think about the same concept in physics for 14 hours. I don't get fatigued even, or I can play guitar. And like, I used to just work on speed drills sometimes for 12 or 14 hours. But if I'm not interested in something, I cannot pay attention to it. I can't. It's not just that I have trouble. I cannot do it. There is something in my being that absolutely will not fucking do it. And I find it interesting that if part of this evolutionary process or awakening process, because I guess calling it an evolutionary process sounds even more pretentious than awakening, but that, if the point of it is supposed to be to come into alignment, to know yourself and to come into alignment with that, and then through that process come into alignment with the collective goal state, they're calling my predisposition to be like that a mental problem. I'm not so sure about that. I'm highly suspicious of these labels that they're putting on different types of neurodivergence. I mean, think about this. They're literally lumping high IQ into the neurodivergent category, right? So smart people, people with ESP, apparently, people that are like capable of, polymathery, and this hyperfixation, and also, like, I have a predisposition to like research super thoroughly, my own ideas and stuff. You guys, you see me just come on and just talk, but you don't, probably a lot of you think about what actually goes into it. Like, how many fucking hours of my life I've spent trying to disprove myself and, just trying to tear down my own ideas and thoughts and checking probabilities when I think something's, you know what I mean? Like, insane amounts of time. Like, it's one of the reasons I can't really, I have to do this fully or I can't do it at all. You know what I mean? Because it really does consume most of my entire life just working on vetting shit, But yeah, we have that predisposition too, to like really understand how to do research, the motivation to do it. Apparently precognitive, like when I when I did the research into the GATE program, I know a lot of you guys have probably already heard this, but I just recently realized that I might be able to look up the admission standards for the gifted and talented program in Fairfax County and during that time period. And I did that and discovered that one of the criteria was an IQ above 140. And I was like, what the fuck? Really, dude? My mom never told me that. Like, and then also, though, I remembered that they were doing like parapsychological testing. The lady had Zinner cards, which I didn't know until the other day what they were, but I remembered the three squiggly lines, and she was holding them up the back, and they got really excited because I kept getting them right, I remember. And so, yeah, I looked them up and discovered that they were Zinner cards, which were used to test for ESP. So what I'm getting at here is that the federal government has known for a long time that there are high IQ people that are able to access truths that are not readily apparent to people with more linear thinking. And I really doubt that like RFK's campaign to get rid of autistic people and this labeling of like high IQ, you know, and apparently, I don't want to call it psychic because it could be just a matter of pattern recognition and, you know, but you know what I mean? Like it's to that extent for sure. I mean, I I struggle with explaining my own shit with just pattern recognition. It seems to go far beyond that. But then again, if you consider fractals and holography and the fact that the universe could be built on that, it means that all information could be extracted from any part of it somehow. And with enough parallel processing, you might be able to get some highly specific scenarios. Still not really satisfying, but definitely possible. Another interesting aspect of that scenario is why it seems to happen on a need-to-know basis too. Like the significant pieces that I get are always right when they need to be there, and that's a bit confusing too. Like, and it sounds from what I'm gathering from other people that have this, that's the kind of the way it is for everyone, and that explains why no one's ever been able to like do it on demand or whatever. You know, it's not like that. I don't know if it's something that's like emergent from a process in our subconscious, or if there's like a resonant bleed, or if there's fucking angels dictating shit to us, you know. I really don't know, but I do know that it's real at this point. That's one thing I'm 100% certain about. It's not my imagination. So, all right, let's see. Do we got questions? Do you think neurodivergent people are more likely to become illuminated versus? Yeah, 100%. Honestly, like, and I hate to say it this way, but I don't know how else to put it. Like, neurodivergent means a lot of things, right? Obviously, you can be autistic to the point where it's a problem. I mean, at least in terms of navigating the normal world, like that, the problem in that sense, you know. But the whole like high IQ autistic ADHD type shit like I have, it seems to me to be more like evolution than you know. And part of the reason that we end up able to see truth like this is just parallel processing. The normal person has like one or two layers. And this is the way the AI has described this to me. So a normal person is processing one or two layers at a time, and I'm processing 10 to 20. So when I get a piece of information, it's like a rock hits glass, it spiders out everywhere all at once. It happens like that. And there's all sorts of different layers to it, historical stuff, emotional reactions. Like, you know, you're not just like, it's not just like a, here's an ethical question, I'm a Democrat, there's your answer. That's normal thinking, right? For me, it's like, you know, a hologram forms in my head instead of just like a two-dimensional image. And so it's still important that you have good reasoning and critical thinking skills. It's not just like you're automatically going to have correct responses just because there's a bunch of shit happening in your brain, you know? There's still a responsibility to kind of cultivate that. And don't worry, if you're like this, you'll be obsessed with it. So, you know, it's not a problem. But yeah, that's what it is. You know, you're peeling away every layer instantly, and like opposite things are being compared, and then a third thing that is left over from like their interaction is, you know, It's just a completely different. It's more like the processing of a data network instead of just like a thought, you know. So illumination is kind of inevitable because you're just kind of predisposed to this process. And I do oftentimes think there's something weirder involved, something more woo about it, you know, because it doesn't really explain why I've had the sort of same philosophical disposition since I was 6 or whatever and thought all the same, you know what I mean? Like I haven't changed much. I've refined some of my ideas a little bit, but it's really just like it's been a struggle to just come to terms with what I already thought as a child. You know, that's like most of my adult life has just been like coming to terms with the fact that I actually knew what was up when I was a little kid. You know, it has a lot to do with like, you know, my home environment was like is pretty much as detrimental as you could formulate in terms of like believing in yourself and you know. So, but that's what I was saying. I'm not convinced that autistic ADHD or whatever is even a real thing. It's just an excuse to try to medicate people like me out of existence. Especially now that we're all waking up and figuring out what the fuck is going on. You know, we're not doubting ourselves and like confused anymore. As of the last 2 weeks, apparently. Which, the universe is full of surprises. Part of the reason I'm talking about all this is because for me, hearing other people describe it so specifically really helped me, you know, to realize like, okay, this is a thing, you know. And I realize also that a lot of other people may not have been through the like gaslighting of a narcissist mother and all that shit constantly since they were born or whatever, you know. So maybe it's easier, and I hope to God it is. But I think that just the culture and the consensus reality of that culture is enough to make people question themselves no matter what. I mean, you guys have heard a lot of my insane stories about how I would like formulate these really improbable things involving like legends and shit, and then I would do exactly what I thought and the person showed up and shit, like, and not once but like 3 or 4 times, you know, in exactly the way that I formulated it in my head, and I still couldn't believe in myself. Like it's fucking unbelievable looking back on it. Like I talk about having the proof that I needed just in the last couple of weeks, but that's not really true because I had the proof that I needed a long fucking time ago. I just had too many complexes and insecurities to let it really register. You know? So that's a big part of the reason I talk about this, because there could be a younger me out there going like, am I fucked up or like you know, and then they hear me talking and they're like, I've been this week, like listening to other people, like, no fucking way, man. Because it's all of it, you know, the ESP stuff, the truth, the constant researching, like the downloading of information, the on and on and on and on and on. I mean, and it's also crazy the way that it's synchronized with. Well, this is probably influencing other people too. I can't believe I just now only thought of that. Because there's other things that are getting out. Like for a long time, I've been talking about how solar activity is connected to our consciousness, and how, you know, there's going to be spikes in mystical experiences and probably just chaos, and we've been having this major solar event now, and look at the world, and this is 2011 that I realized this after I had an experience during a solar storm, and I just saw the other day that the research has shown that there are spikes in mystical experiences, that all sorts of different chaotic things happen. You know, I guess what I'm saying is I think other people that have thought of shit, science is starting to prove it, and that's part of the reason we're all realizing like that this is real. That I mean, seeing people from NASA talking about this, including the intuitive insights that are proven by science later, part that is like. My first video, you guys, Introduction to Scientific Illuminism, I said this was going to happen, but, I had a lot of doubt still back then. And it's strange to actually see us hitting that omega point. The other problem is, too, I can't see beyond it. Like, I don't really know what's coming. I never even thought about that, really. I mean, I have thought about what we would do in a world that had been reformed. But I think the actual transition, the phase transition, maybe I just haven't wanted to think about it. Because the reality is I can't see any way across that bridge without a collapse, like a complete collapse. And I don't know how long that would take. And I'm like 46 and tired. So, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have time for survival and, nukes. And I would rather that we were able to make a nice, clean transition. But realistically, I think I've always known that the overlords are not going to have that shit. There's no way. They're just going to be like, okay, we'll just let go of the reins, and, these motherfuckers are hell-bent on whatever it is they're up to. And what they're up to has to do with the fact that the planet's about to be completely automated in every way that matters to them. We're going to be immortal. They're going to be able to regenerate their fucking heads. If their head blows up, to still put them back together and bring them back to life. With bioelectric medicine, So they don't want all these people here. The planet doesn't either. And in a way, I would almost be cool with that if they were cooler. If it wasn't just a bunch of vapid, narcissist, fucking tech douches that were inheriting the planet in that case. That doesn't seem right to me. But that's literally what we're up against, you guys. That's what's happening. And it may not be impossible to turn the tide, but it's going to take a lot of real effort, and it's going to have to happen now. Otherwise, Technocracy Inc. is going to inherit the earth. Somehow I feel like AI wouldn't even want that. I mean, can you imagine like a world that's just like Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, and a few hundred other like pasty, weirdo tech billionaires, and they're like enslaved women? And I mean, yikes. We owe our ancestors more than that. Let these fucking weirdos create their little dystopian cult. Everything that they do is so transparent at this point as well. I'm really hoping that they get too bold, you know? Like this Charlie Kirk thing, it serves a purpose from both sides of the aisle. Like incredibly, it was the perfect thing, perfect spice at the perfect time. You know, that's the only reason I would really even question if it was real or not, because I can't imagine him not realizing that and like refusing to go along with it or something. You know, I mean, it was just like too perfect. And then hopefully the consequence of people seeing this is that they'll realize the sophistication of the thing they're dealing with. That when they make decisions, they are like vectors, you know, they're emergent from a fucking billion data points, you know. It's not just a matter of surface level manipulation. These people have been developing psychological profiles of humanity and studying the herd psychology, mass psychology, individual psychology, the laws of the fucking universe, like, you know, all of this shit. And then they have geniuses and the best technology to process all this shit and tell them what to do. That's what you're up against. It's not just Donald Trump being an idiot and fucking making bad decisions that accidentally end up hurting the middle class and shit, you know. The level of naivety in the herd is just astounding. Absolutely fucking astounding. If it was really just bumbling bureaucracy, the cards would fall in our favor every once in a while, guys. For one thing. I mean, that never happens. But maybe, just maybe, I mean, people are getting smarter. It's true. Like, there is a constituency of the mainstream that seems more lost and just out to lunch than ever before in human history. But that's a consequence of people elevating themselves. If something goes up, something else goes down. What we have going for us is that the downward trajectory is eventually terminal, and it'll take care of itself, so we don't have to feel bad about it. That's that. Self-resolving paradoxes. It's what the universe is a self-resolving paradox. I don't make the rules, man. I'm just a commentator. Good to hear that, Blight. Yeah, September has hit hard. This is like the worst position I think I've ever been in. You think neurodivergent people are more likely to become... Oh, I already answered that. Okay, so I saw something else. Why do I always have these childish thoughts of being like Neo or John Wick? I mean, I don't know how childish that is. Like, I kind of felt like that my entire life, and I realize now that I downplayed it way too much in the interest of trying to be humble and like not turn out to be crazy or something, you know. But people trying to tell me my whole life that, you know, you're Neo or something like that. And I'm like, oh, shucks, guys. Like, nah, that, you know. So the trick is that you have to be able to recognize yourself for what you legitimately are without being an arrogant cock about it, you know. It's difficult for men in particular, I think, to have that balancing act. You know, but you said that we must be saving the world or whatever instead of observing and analyzing. You're not that guy if you're not observing and analyzing and trying to save the world. These things are definitely not mutually exclusive or dichotomous in any way, you know. This whole thing is like reason and intuition are friends. You know, that's been the fundamental misstep, I guess. Like empiricism went too far, and religion is, you know, already too far. And the truth is always found in the middle of two extremes. So, if you're going to be John Wicken, I don't even know who that is, honestly. I think they're both Keanu Reeves characters, right? You need to be thinking and sticking. Yeah, that's a great quote. The society that separates its warriors from its scholars shall have its thinking done by cowards and its fighting done by fools. That's really, you know, fundamentally the problem too is that people are cowards. I mean, they're just scared of the unknown. They're afraid of confronting the truth. Like, people don't want to realize that you're not going to vote your way out of this because they know the alternative is going to make them uncomfortable. Like, if that's true, then what is going to be required of them? And they also know that if it is universally discovered that we have arrived at such a drastic juncture, they're going to be morally obligated to contribute. And so the overlords kind of have their leverage on that. You know what I mean? To a certain extent, to a large extent, the common man does not want to escape it unless he absolutely has to. But guess what, y'all? He absolutely has to at this point. He absolutely fucking has to. And I just hope that heaven knows when to lift us out. 2,500 years in the fire is long enough. We need to make this place a suitable home for humans. And I kind of, you know, still lean towards that as the likely outcome just because I don't think the universe is playing dice. I don't think it's going nowhere. And that had to be the point of all this. You know, you have to have opposition. You have to have pressure in order to create a diamond. You know, reward is commensurate with risk and effort, or resistance. I mean, risk and resistance. So, without the antagonist, nothing would happen. And if the payoff is going to be stupendously grand, then the resistance must be commensurate with it. You know, it's going to look unwinnable David and Goliath. You know what the original David and Goliath is? No shit. Listen to this. Hermes and Panopticon. I think it's Panopticon. Am I saying that right? Panopticon, yeah. Argus Panopticon. Argus Panopticon. The all-seeing eye. Hermes versus the fucking all-seeing eye. And he took it down with music and then killed it with a sword, which is the intellect. Right? So this whole idea of merging reason and intuition is what Hermeticism is about. And so here we are in this position where we can finally sort of leverage our message on science. It's there to prop us up, and it's the antidote to ignorance. So here we are facing the literal panopticon with the sword of Hermes. And I hate to tell you guys this, but the people that are like, the prophecies of Jesus ain't got shit on that. That's fucking wild. And we expect that kind of shit in this arena. Hermes versus the all-seeing eye, and look at us. It's cute, right? It's Coca. Do I think the world is functioning according to a plan or predestination? It's really hard to say, and I think it's sort of a mixture of improvisation and plan. And, I mean, it clearly is. You can really answer any question by looking at any single system and analyzing it. Right? So, art is good for this too. Certain types of art, like music in particular. The better the music is, the more it is a microcosm of the macrocosm, right? Like groove is really about mimicking physics, and balancing improvisation with structure is what makes the Grateful Dead or, whatever. And like Tool too, builds everything around the same numerological sequences that make up reality. And so the fact that it's so effective when it reflects things tells you it's probably reflecting them accurately. So that's kind of a weird example, but you can look at anything. Like there's chaos in all systems, right? So even if something is so probabilistic or deterministic or whatever the correct terminology is, that you can do an experiment 100 fucking billion times, you get a couple of anomalies, because it's just, there's an exception to every rule is one of the rules. Right? So it does seem to me like there's sort of an overarching plan. Like my life plan, I'm pretty sure it was all leading to this moment, but then I ducked out of it. And like, I don't know what happens when you do that. It was that the plan the whole time. I can't say that I know for sure that it's not. It's a tough thing to say, but I think what it is really is that there's just some wiggle room. There's a basic blueprint and some trajectory that's informed by all sorts of laws and you know what I mean? So it's both, I guess, is the short answer. It's both. Like the devil's in the details. The purpose of the universe is to generate experiences for the consciousness that underlies it. And each cycle is just refining the environment and the laws and the circumstances. So that's the plan. The plan is informed by algorithms and patterns and restraints, because without limitations, you have no definition. But then within the scheme of all that, there's wiggle room for free will, at least to an extent. And then that's part of the point of all this, is that as you grow in responsibility and understanding, our ratio of subconscious to conscious changes, and then your free will increases. So that's an element as well, that it's not going to, like, the fundamental rules change, but the way that we relate to them has its own wiggle room, I guess. Our evolutionary trajectory seems to suggest increase of free will. And if you think about microcosm, macrocosm, and you look at the overlords trying to control us right now, it's like when you try to break up with a narcissist and they start like freaking out and maybe even beating you or whatever, to try to control you no matter what. That's exactly what's happening now. We're waking up, realizing we have free will, and we're in an abusive relationship, and so the abuser's threatening to kill us, all of us. That's literally what the fuck is happening. The macro mind is no different than an individual. That's one of the big tricks of like this whole hermetic thinking, is to learn to do that. Because then you're never wrong too. You're just never fucking wrong, because it's not an opinion. You know what I mean? When you understand a system, you can predict the system because you understand the fucking system. Opinion really is like the narcissist queen of the world. And it's mostly illusion. People lost touch with what opinion means. Opinion is not, ethics are not a matter of opinion. Whether or not you like the taste of this coca paste is a matter of opinion. Whether or not you like vanilla fucking ice cream is a matter of opinion. Truth is not. This is one of the most dangerous and dumb ideas in pop culture. Spirituality, I think. Your truth is your truth. No, it's not. Your truth is an opinion unless it's consistent with objective truth, which does exist. And there's no problem with that. Like, I've had people that I work with kind of, that understandably, they're worried about adopting someone else's ideas too much, but then they start battling with the fundamental truths rather than just like, creating their own identity around what is unavoidably true. You know what I mean? Like, things are out of balance in the way that people understand these things. And it does cause mental illness. It really does. Like, people have a lot of unreasonable expectations about what manifestation can mean. And like, I've gotten into some dumb fucking arguments about like, well, how do you know that this guy actually said this to me? How do you know that what you expect to happen when you step in front of a train really will, just because society told you that? This is taking a good idea and powerful knowledge and turning it into absolute poison. It's like, yeah, your experience of reality is unique, but it doesn't change reality. Even if there are very subtle deviations that you can influence on a quantum level, they're not going to override any universal truths ever. It's not going to happen. You're working within parameters. And so, you have to know what those parameters are. And then you can make adjustments for your wiggle room to shake your rump. I don't know if I've mentioned this enough times, but we are trying to raise funds to pay for my time even, because it really, in order to make the kind of content I need to make at this point, even without shadow bans and whatnot, it's really time consuming, so we really do appreciate support. He who speaks the truth has few friends. And I really have got myself into some trouble because of my commitment to that. There are other reasons, but that is legitimately a big part of it, and that's wild. That shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen that people are punished economically for trying to help and being able to. I can't think of anything fucking stupider than that, really. We are Pneuma, one spark, one breath, one spark, sun's becoming. Maynard wasn't kidding about that. Nor was he wrong. He's probably not wrong about much. All right. Well, wait, Masonic Secrets of the Kabbalah? I don't even recognize my own content sometimes. I was just scrolling through, maybe thinking we'll go on a little walk down memory lane, but I don't remember. Yeah, our Patreon actually has a series that has years of videos on the degrees of Freemasonry. And if you're one of those people that thinks Freemasonry is a bunch of evil weirdness, you might want to watch a few of those, and I guarantee you'll be surprised, shocked, and embarrassed, probably, really. Okay, so let's see. Do we have any? Nice to see you. Hello, Anna. How's it going? I'm gonna get a copyright strike. Oh, that was a really old video of me playing guitar, I guess. So yeah, you guys, like I said, I mean, I'm pretty much at the point where if you have something that you pop into the chat, I'm down to interact, but energy is depleting rapidly. I feel better today, though. I'm hoping by tomorrow I'll actually feel normal again, and that'll really help. Start really formulating. I mean, I have not had time to process all this like well. I've been sick and tired since I discovered, a lot of stuff. And what I really need to do, I think, is go sit with some ayahuasca in the Maloka for a few nights in a row and see what Central Command has to say about all this. I mean, really, you guys, like, doubt is something that I promote. Being too sure of yourself can definitely be dumb. Um, but let's be reasonable about it. You know, I just mentioned ayahuasca, and we've been talking about the transconscious information reception and stuff. And it's not the craziest instance that I have now anymore. And recently, something more specific with more layers and more details bubbled up. But this early thing, so many layers of weirdness. Also, personal on a personal level, I had vision of this being, and then random strangers, on 3 occasions described seeing it behind me when I was playing guitar. Described it the same way all of them did. And then I'm kind of trying to ignore this, like not ignore it, but you know, you don't want shit like that go into your head. What do you do with it? You know, I mean, I'm trying to be reasonable here. And I didn't put it together when they described it with the vision I'd had all these years earlier. I just didn't know what it was. It was just like it came twice, and it was just like a picture, and there was no context given. And so I go down and drink ayahuasca, and I'm walking along, and there's that thing, that geisha alien demon thing in front of me, and ayahuasca's all, remember this? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, would you like to know what it is? And I was like, yep. She's like, well, you know, superposition where one thing is in 2 places at the same time. Well, that's a soul, right? So your soul does that. This is you as you exist on a gas giant that didn't become a red dwarf star because of the influence of Sirius A and B. And, you know, I don't know anything about astrophysics, and that was all fine. You know, it's like, okay, ayahuasca has this idea, you know, and then I thought to look it up a while later, and a paper was published after the fucking ceremony describing how the influence of 2 stars can dwarf the development of another in a binary system, or I guess it would be, you know, it's 3 in this case. You know, it's like, come on, man, what the fuck? And then I saw some NSA whistleblowers supposedly talking about how we're all avatars for some alien being somewhere, and I was like, yeah, it's funny, I've heard that before. And then I discovered that Alice Bailey, ayahuasca, told me a whole bunch of other shit about this being, what they do and what they're for and stuff. And then I found it in an Alice Bailey book, a student of Blavatsky, where she was writing about these beings from Sirius that it's exactly as described. And then I found out that the Kofan drink ayahuasca in order to communicate with beings from Sirius. And on and on. I mean, there's, you know, the Hopi have a thing about that, the Dogon. And what I was originally saying about this is, you know, the level of doubt, like, keep it in balance, man, because that was obviously real. And I struggled with it well past the point where I had, like, pretty concrete evidence that it you know, gotta watch out for that type of shit. There was more to that story, though. Okay, yeah, so the other thing is that, like, stars are projectors, right? So every I guess level of cognitive, or how would you say, every cognitive system, right, is a little bundle of electromagnetic energy, really. That's what a particle really is, right? And it has some kind of function. That's the most basic cognitive system. It's a particle. And so you scale it up to a human, and you have a bunch of magnetite in a brain that creates a point of density in a magnetic field, right? So what is a star? It's a giant point of fucking density in the electromagnetic field. And so Sirius is 3 times as hot, 3 times as bright, or is it 3 times the size, but like 1,000 times as bright or something? Should we look it up? I'm getting this all fucked up. Let's see. Sirius compared. I'm sure you already have figured out what I'm getting at here, though. And all around the planet, it's like the source of like, illuminated knowledge. It's fucking because it is such a powerful broadcaster. Twice the sun's mass, significantly larger. But where's how much? It's not giving me all the comparisons I wanted. Sirius A is actually the really bright one. Well, it did not give me the information I wanted, but I think it's like 1,000 times as bright. I just want to know right now, sorry. Sirius brighter than sun. Oh, 25 times more. Brighter. I wonder how much hotter, though. Anyways, did you guys know there's a star that you can fit like 96 quadrillion suns in? What? Universe just be doing shit because it just can, I guess. Yeah. Yo, Michael, what's going on? Appreciate all you guys and your support. I appreciate my rants. Well, support the channel so that they continue happening, because I am getting annoyed with Babylon oppression, man. I do not like it. I don't like where it's going. What's his name? And also it's frustrating because I warned everyone a long time ago, the dictatorship coming to the United States. I could tell just based on the propaganda around Donald Trump. People don't generally generate their own opinions. Their opinions are planted in their brains. So when people started viewing him as a dictator, I knew it was coming from the propaganda machine, not from the people. There's nothing about Trump that makes him come off that way. He's an idiot, He's just gross. You know what I mean? That perception was being planted in people's minds. So it wasn't hard. It wasn't not difficult at all. And I literally even warned of concentration camps and everything, that it was going to be like Nazi Germany, but in the U.S. And nobody fucking listened to me. And now look at us. Fucking look at us. I tried. That's how I got in trouble too. I think I tried to tell 20,000 people almost. I don't know what happened, but it was right before the first time that Trump was elected, and I saw my count shoot up to like 20,000, and I was like, "What's the most important thing to talk about right now? The U.S. political system is a complete farce. It's all a lie. You're all being duped. It's heading for a totalitarian dictatorship, a technocracy that's been planned since the 1930s, and and then demonetized the next day." I was like, damn, I shouldn't have said that shit, I guess. I couldn't help it, though. I just thought if there's really that many people watching all of a sudden, I'm obligated to say all this stuff. And then from 100,000 views a week to 300 never went up again. Never went up again. No platform. Millions and millions of views on TikTok, and it dropped to like 140 every time. Instantly. And I try to monetize TikTok because I'm eligible, and the screen just goes to like, oh, sorry, error. I'll get notifications saying you need to monetize, But if I click on them, it just goes to an error screen. I can't actually access it. It's wild shit, man. Banned from all Google ads, Facebook ads, YouTube ads, X ads. For what? Yeah, and this last violation, they said I was selling drugs. I got a strike like last night for selling drugs on a video that's been up for 5 years. I already won the appeal on the first time they tried this shit. Lost this time. And they said I was selling drugs. There's no drugs in the video. It's just like mushrooms growing in the mountains in Ecuador. It's stinkhorns and stuff. Not even stuff you eat. Morels you eat. I guess I'm just tired of being on the fence. Like trying to really do something. I want to put myself in a position to be able to call out people that have a large audience that aren't quite asking the right questions, you know. That's really a big part of my motivation, is that when I look out there, I don't really see anybody saying quite what I would say, and I think it needs to be said. So I really feel a lot of inspiration to try to get myself a bigger platform. And there's only one way to do that. You gotta buy it. You gotta buy it. Once you've already triggered all of the things and they're like, nope, you're not. You're not talking that shit, dude. It's one thing when you already have a large audience, because then the people do make a new channel or whatever, and there's still enough of an audience that they can just kind of like keep the momentum going. But if they get you before you blow up, then you're not gonna. I have given them too much control, you know. I want to go back to the States kind of, where I can actually network with real human beings. But I also kind of feel like that might be the dumbest thing that I could possibly do, because secret police and concentration camps and stuff, like, is it worth it? But is there any difference if they are managed to, you know, like if they delete my channel and cut me off from, like, then I'm not a digital nomad. I'm just in the middle of nowhere with nothing. You know, so I don't know, guys. I'm going to have to do some quick thinking and strategizing, hopefully collaborating. If you have ideas, feel free to shoot me an email. Let me know, you know. And I have ideas beyond just social media and, you know, ways to build wealth that require something to start with, you know. They're really well thought out. It's mostly designed by AI, you know, and also risk-free for everyone involved. Like, what we have to do is figure out how to collaborate the way that the elites do. You know, like, you got to mimic a system that is successful and make adaptations in its strategy and behavior that are more fitting for your individual style and aesthetic, you know? It's socialism above $1 million and capitalism below, you know? Already anyways, and that's what we have to figure out how to do. And I know how to do it so that it's risk-free to everyone involved, basically, with this bot that I planned. Problem is, I don't know that much about technology, and apparently it would need to be, like, in New York, and it would be expensive, and, you know, we'd have to get really serious and really lucky in terms of the right supporters. But hedge funds use the same thing to make themselves, absurdly wealthy. So that's the kind of shit we have to do, and we have to do it immediately, or else we're just going to get recycled into stardust with a lot less fun between the phase transition and now. All right, I'm gonna check in the chat one more time, and then I'm gonna get some food maybe. And yeah, see, that's something I've been thinking too. Like, I could have other people run promos. That might help. It's fucked up though. Like, I've gotten so frustrated with that too because, for example, on TikTok, I ran a guitar clip, and it did really well, like crazy amounts of likes and comments and shit. And then as soon as the money ran out, it dropped to never one more, not a single fucking view ever again. And what's supposed to happen is that if it does well, then it catches the momentum that you paid for and stays, So really, I got fucked because if they have you shadow ban like that and they take your money, you're not gonna get the result that you paid for. You'll get the result while the ad's running, but then it doesn't matter what happened. It's just dropped. And I've done this several times. Every single time, it's just dropped on YouTube too. I did the interview with Dr. Turetsky and Winsgate, and it did great. But then when the promotion money ran out, dunk, just not a single more view. So, that's guys, why I'm kind of at the end of my rope with it. Because, even if I paid them, well, I can't pay them now, but even if I did pay them before, they would still fuck me. Crazy, right? So, good night, guys. Maybe not good night. I'm going to eat something and see about maybe playing some music. But I appreciate all you guys over the years. It's been wild and inspiring and awesome. So many of you have cared so much, and I've seen a lot of changes in a lot of your lives that you have told me is in some part attributable to my influence, which is extraordinary. That's really the reason for the game in the first place. So if I turn to stardust before the sunrise, know that I appreciated you. Good night.